We could come to an arrangement. You want to sit on your blue mat? Sit on my lap for a little bit. Okay. Maybe not. Hello and welcome, friends in the Dharma, or in other words, brothers and sisters in aging, sickness and death. That doesn't sound very happy, but that is why hopefully most people watching this is because they are looking for a way, albeit online or by reading, to find a little bit of happiness in this life we have. And if that can be found by way of simplicity, as opposed to all of the complicated ways we have become accustomed to search for happiness, then that is much better, isn't it? And this is what the Buddha taught us, to find happiness in simplicity, happiness even through renunciation rather than acquisition, which in its own right brings along a whole lot more suffering. Just getting back to some very basic Buddhism here, and I remember hearing a talk on some very basic Buddhism, I think given by a lay person, but a very devout Buddhist, and he used the analogy of an iPad or something like that, or an iPhone, and wanting the new iPad or new iPhone, and the minute it arrived, being so elated and so happy, but then scratching the screen and all is lost. And it was a good example that we must always remind ourselves of, as to how suffering comes about through acquisition. And at that point I learned a lesson of a practical nature, and thereafter only bought reconditioned or this was before I was a monk, reconditioned or second-hand phones. As we upgraded each year, I would always be a year or two behind. The other advantage is these models had been tried and tested. They came with a guarantee, they'd been refurbished. I'm not selling phones here, it sounds like it, doesn't it? But they were never new. So if it got a scratch, it didn't matter so much. So it brought a degree of contentment. It served its purpose, but without that additional suffering of the brand new thing. Like a brand new car, as you drive it away from the dealership, it's immediately lost thousands of pounds in value. Mostly that is the case. So, moving on. Bhante. I don't steal nor kill on purpose. No sexual misconduct on any level. No lies, except to myself, I believe, and no alcohol or drugs or anything of the sort. Yet why am I not at peace? That's the question. It goes on to say, I hear that in Mahayana the fifth precept can also include action like over shopping or being online in excess. Would you talk about what else the precepts may cover? So I'm getting quite a few comments with regards to precepts. I must have spoken about them, which is why they've come together. And what more do they cover? One should stop trying to think of what more they cover and just deal with them as they are. As you quite rightly say, you're not killing, you're not stealing, you're not committing sexual misconduct, and you're refraining from alcohol or drugs. Yes, you could take a sixth precept, in fact, towards using these days smartphones for what they can be used for. But really, in most respects, if you're using such a device in an unwholesome way, it's going to be in relation to one of the existing 5 precepts, if not, and certainly, the 5 hindrances to meditation, so sensual desire or aversion primarily. There is also laziness, restlessness and worry, and doubt, which can also be very seriously contributed to, that is restlessness and worry and doubt, by the overuse or overexposure to too much information, too much knowledge, but in often, as it can be the case when finding something online, the wrong information or the wrong knowledge, or misappropriately placed information or knowledge. But specifically, the 5 precepts, it seems, from the comments, the number of comments I've received, difficult enough in themselves to keep. But in answer to your question, going back to that, yet why am I still not at peace? Because you answer your question there in your question, in your initial statement, no lies except to myself. Well, if you're lying to yourself, that's worse, just as bad as anything else, or to anyone else. We begin these precepts towards ourselves. Now let's summarize all 5 precepts. They aim to prevent us from causing harm to ourselves or others. So we want to refrain from harming ourselves or any other beings, sentient beings. So it begins with ourself. So if you're lying to yourself, you will not be at peace. I mean, why lie to yourself? You know you're lying to yourself. This is a way of fueling doubt, that 5th hindrance towards your practice, towards your meditation. Doubt I spoke about at some length. One comment expressed a bit of dissatisfaction there, saying that I thought you were going to explain how to get rid of doubt. Well, I did. The answer to that, quite simply, is try it for yourself. And then you'll know there's nothing to doubt. So if you have doubt about the 5 precepts, it's the same applies. Keep all 5 precepts, including don't lie to yourself, and you'll find you will be at peace, if in any way, without expansion upon them. So I won't expand upon them. They're simple. You don't kill any other beings. You don't steal anything or take anything that isn't given to you, offered to you, or you've, as a layperson, bought and paid for, or formed some agreement or transaction of kind. You refrain from all forms of sexual misconduct. By that I mean you stay in faithful relationships, you're truthful in that respect, but any relations, sexual relations, should be mutually beneficial and consensual. You do not lie, full stop. Now another comment, I think I just saw it this morning, and I think I answered it in a video already, but it implied that I hadn't given a satisfactory answer, and that was perhaps because I seem to have come up with that question. It's come up twice now in a row about this whole, is it okay to lie if it stops someone dying? And then, let me just quickly skip to the latest version of this comment. Oh, I can't do that so easily, can I? See, this is why I don't like to use these things. My question was a bit more specific in terms of the extreme case of when not lying results in someone's death, and a bit more general in the sense of what to do in edge cases when the precepts contradict each other, for which I use that as an example. Okay, so I'm not entirely sure what you mean by edge cases, and I have to say that the precepts, those five precepts do not contradict each other in any respect. So if you'd like to give me an example of where they do, a specific example that you have experienced would be good, then I can try and address that question. However, I will say in the overall answer to all of these precepts and the breaking thereof, or specifically this lying to save someone who might die as a result of you telling the truth. If you have practiced, you are practicing correctly and sufficiently. That is, you're keeping the precepts, you're practicing the Noble Eightfold Path. So you're keeping the precepts, you're practicing meditation, developing wholesome mind states and reducing unwholesome mind states. Then when faced with that situation, having developed metta, loving kindness, karuna, compassion, mudita, joy for others specifically, and equanimity, upekkha, you will know the answer. You will know what to do because you've been practicing. If you haven't been practicing, there will be a dilemma. So the go-to answer in that situation, if you've just begun practicing, is to know that you can do no harm by keeping the precepts to either yourself or another. But I'll reinforce what I said in the second time I answered it, and that was probably in the last video, that, well, if you haven't been in that situation, why are you even worrying about it? Because you're not likely at the moment, these days, to be in that situation. Now, I know you're using it as an example, but I'm not sure where or why that is and what these edge cases are. There are no edges, there's no black and white, there's no grey areas, it's black and white. You don't kill, you don't steal, you don't lie. So you don't commit sexual misconduct, you don't lie, you don't take intoxicants. So hopefully that's precepts are fairly straightforward there. Okay, if you claim to be a former Christian, I would be very interested in your former beliefs as a Christian. Oh, so that's quite, I missed that point. It does say in my former beliefs, right? Is Jesus God revealed in the flesh, fully man and fully God? Is Jesus Christ the only way to the Father? Did the shedding of his blood give us forgiveness of our sins and eternal life? Is the Bible absolutely true and should be the guideline of our life? This is something every Christian should answer with yes. Well, my answer to all four of those is I didn't believe that was the case, no. Even formally, whilst as a Christian, which is why I am no longer considered a Christian. However, in my own consideration, I don't believe, I know there was a teacher we refer to as Jesus Christ, so that makes me a Christian. But as for all of that teacher, Jesus Christ's teachings, I don't accept them all, that he was the son of a God and this God was sent. I think he was speaking personally, this is only my view, in metaphorical analogical terms. So there we go. Peace be with you all in that respect. May I ask, when shall you become Ajahn? Well, Ajahn actually is a Thai term which just means, it means teacher. So you would even hear Thai people perhaps calling a university professor Ajahn. But primarily in Thailand, in the Thai forest tradition anyway, which is the only one I really know much about, after 10 years of being a bhikkhu, you'd be referred to as Ajahn, not before. And also you wouldn't be teaching before that time. So I don't really consider myself a teacher, just someone sharing my own experiences. But worldly, as I say, that's a Thai term. Worldly, all monks are referred to, the common name is the Pali, because we are Theravada monks, so we're operating from using the Pali language from the Pali canon. We are called Bhante, which is loosely translated as venerable. But here they call me Harudara which means reverend, as in like the religious Christian priests or vicars, something like that, reverend. But Buddhism is a global. It's not really regionalized. Especially in my perception of it and the way I practice. I've moved around quite a bit, as you know. I've practiced in my own country, England, in India, Nepal, Thailand, Cambodia, now here in Sri Lanka. So I've maintained the same core practices coming from the Vinaya, which is the legacy of the Buddha, the rules for monks and nuns, and the teachings of the Buddha as contained in the Sutta Pitaka, which is common throughout all of those regional places, those different countries and different places, and throughout all of those southern schools of Buddhism. So terminology isn't so important. As a prefix, Bhante is the usual term, or if you can't remember the name, which we often can't, I struggle with my own actually, Bhante Dharmarakita. Then when monks have been ordained for 10 years, I think they become Thera in the Pali, and then I think it's 20, they're Thera and Mahathera after 20 years, something like that. Thera after 10, Mahathera after 20. But that's hopefully clear. The biggest drug is technology. So hard to kick this constant need for stimulation. So that's a comment really rather than a question, but it's certainly where we were talking about earlier does bring in the use of the smartphone or technology in general, I suppose, into this area of the sixth precept because of its nature to be addictive. However, and this is the however, the sixth precept is specifically relating to substances we consume, drugs or smoke or inject or whatever, that will affect mindfulness. Because it says in the precept that may lead to mindlessness or heedlessness. Therefore, you could break the other four precepts, which is the critical issue here. So addiction to a game, for instance, or your smartphone, for instance, isn't necessarily going to lead to heedlessness. It may sharpen your concentration skills if you're playing skillful, wholesome games. It may keep you from doing something unwholesome, like breaking one of the fourth other precepts. So it isn't comparable in that sense. It's a separate aspect of life. But before there was technology, before there were smartphones, there were still addictions. People were addicted to having hordes of, in the time of the Buddha, in that part of the world, in India, well-off people would have concubines, so lots of ladies living with them, or lots of dancing girls and shows, or they may engage in lots of fighting sports, all kinds of different activities that people would become quite addicted to, like sport even in itself is very addictive, especially in the West. And you talk to very dedicated football supporters, it becomes very much a part of their lives. Now, that isn't necessarily unwholesome. It's a wholesome and skillful occupation. After all, sport is generally looking after the body. So it's all about how you use technology. And then you can often apply the precepts in individual cases to specific usages. What can you tell me? Oh, quite a bit. I should think you may not want to or be interested. Let's see. I had a great career job. That was everything to me, and my identity, purpose. My identity, purpose, and made me into the person I wanted to be. Then I made a foolish decision, and it cost me my job. It devastated me. I feel into horrible depression. I fell into horrible depression. I lost interest in life, and suffer with anxiety, insomnia, stuck in fear, isolation every day. How can this suffering end? I feel I ruined my life. I feel that. it's a great shame you feel that and you don't feel the positive sides of having lost your job, because as you quite rightly are saying, you're teaching the Dharma in this statement by that you had a great career and job and it was everything to you. It was your identity, your purpose, your meaning in life and everything. It was the person you wanted to be. Then the job's gone and you feel you're no longer that person and you're lost and you have all of these problems that you described. Well, the point of this practice is that before we encounter this loss, we understand, we practice and we learn the Dharma. Now, picking this up on your deathbed or when you become sick or after the loss of a career is in a way too late. It's taking preventative medicine after the event. This is the point of the practice and the urgency we build into the practice to practice now. So when life-changing events occur, we know how to deal with them equanimously and not be affected negatively as you are. But it's not too late for you because you've identified already that your problem is not losing the job, that you were identified with that job. But that was not you. What is you is the person writing this email now that knows that you were not that job because it no longer exists, now thinks that you are this lesser being, which you are not. You are more of a being in that you are independent in your own right, an individual, separated from that job, which was previously clung onto by yourself as your identity, and that is wrong view. That is the opposite of right view, Sakkayaditthi, this relinquishment, this letting go of personality view. And right view being the understanding that we are just a bag of skin and bones, a thinking brain that is in some form or another the result of causes and conditions that surround us or we have put in place. And one day you could be in this wonderful job, the next day you could be unemployed. And apart from the practical losses, the lack of money and the difficult in keeping the nice accommodation or nice food or supporting the family, these struggles, those struggles were always there, but in varying degrees. Some people have the best job that you might consider as the best job that they really don't like doing, but they have to continue doing it because they are bound to it to support their outgoings that have come to match the income that they're receiving from that job. And then they would feel a tremendous sense of loss like you if they lose that job. So the whole point of the practice is to ready yourself to be enabled when these life-changing events occur, to put the practice in place prior to them occurring. In your case, you are explaining in your statement here exactly the Dharma. You are feeling now suffering. This is the first noble truth. You are explaining the cause of that suffering. It is your desire to have that old job that gave you the sense of identity and meaning in life. But what you're not experiencing yet, the third noble truth, is the end of suffering. The way you can experience the end of suffering, and it's not too late now, is the fourth noble truth, the path leading to the end of suffering, which is the Noble Eightfold Path. So establishing right view, that firstly, this is not just one lifetime. You've had many lifetimes previously, and within this lifetime, if you don't wish to take that on board yet, you've had many. You were a child, you went to school, you may have gone to college or university. You had a career, now you don't. You may have been single, you may not be now, or the other way round. However, these are all different lives, aren't they, within one life. Changes are always occurring. And part of right view, the first step on the Noble Eightfold Path, is understanding that all things are impermanent, unsatisfactory, and out of your control, or more specifically, not self. That job wasn't you. You are you, whom I'm conversing with now. I don't know what your job was, if I'd been talking to you in the capacity of that job, you say you were the bank manager and I was asking for a loan, I would see you just as the bank manager asking for a loan, which is not you, it's a representative of the bank or that uniform of the bank in front of me. What's in front of me now is you, that which knows suffering, that which knows that cause of suffering, because you've identified it. That does know or will know that there can be an end to suffering. And to find that through this Noble Eightfold Path, right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right meditation. And on right livelihood, when you next find a job that you know, next time you have the opportunity to start a new career, look at it with wisdom. You hopefully will develop through keeping precepts, through practicing meditation, you will develop wisdom to know that this job is just a means to an end, a way to feed you, to feed those that you support, to give yourself shelter, clothing and medicine when required. Just the same 4 requisites as myself. I used to have a very different job. Now I don't have a job. This is it. I just practice on the very bare minimum of those 4 requisites, living the simplest and therefore the cheapest way possible, and probably in the cheapest possible place financially. But in terms of generosity and support, a very rich place, because they understand the teachings of the Buddha. They understand Buddhism, and that the Sangha is worthy of support in that respect, because they only require the bare minimum of support. Now, you don't have to run off and become a monk to be happy, but keep watching these videos and learn a bit about Buddhism and learn how you can meditate and keep precepts and meditate with very little in the way of resources. Just sit at home and spend some time allowing your body to relax and settle, allowing your mind to settle and become calm, and practice some meditation each and every day. And you will find the light at the end of the tunnel in due course. And that is really the experience of, first-hand, the experience of what the Buddha is teaching us. And feel free to email if you would like to. Where's this question? Do you believe Maitreya is coming? If so, do you think they would be born enlightened, or like Yeshua and Siddhartha Gautama have to attain it? If not, maybe a little earlier than they did. Also, do you think you will be able to tell who they were out of the crowd before they had become enlightened? So the Maitreya Buddha means the next Buddha that's coming, because there have been many Buddhas before the Buddha we're talking about, but we're talking about in what they call eons of time. Before this Buddha Sasana, which started over 2,500 years ago, and the Buddha himself predicted to last for 5,000, so another 2,500 years. There were countless number of thousands of years prior to this Buddha, when there was a previous Buddha. But we cannot be sure of that. This is what the Buddha has explained to us, and it's written in the suttas. And likewise, he predicts that countless of thousands of eons or years away into the future, there will be another Buddha, the Maitreya Buddha. So we have this limited time span of 5,000 years, which in our lifetimes is a long time, to take advantage of the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha as it is now. So why are you worried about countless of eons of times? If you're going to be reborn over and over again, so you're not going to bother practicing to become free from rebirth into future lifetimes, then you will come across another Buddha Sasana, no doubt, eventually. But don't wait for that long. It's too long to wait. That could be eons and eons in hell realms, heavenly realms, all kinds of realms where you cannot hear, and even in the human realm, unless you are the Buddha, you will not hear, and he didn't hear the Dharma, he discovered it for himself. It will be gone and forgotten. Buddhism will be gone and forgotten for countless thousands of years. As for how enlightened they'll be when they're born, they will be born with all of the parami in place, having attained, developed the parami, qualities of a Buddha, in all of their previous and former lives. They will not have been a Buddha before, but they would have been arahants, and then born outside of a Buddha sasana, so long after this Buddhism as we know it now has been forgotten. This doesn't even necessarily refer or mean to say with reference to this particular planet or cosmology, or that we understand. This could be in a different universe entirely. I don't talk about that stuff because I don't know anything about it. I cannot recount it's the future. It hasn't happened yet. It's predicted, but it may not, and we may not experience. I hopefully will not experience the next Buddha. I hopefully will come free from rebirth long time before then. So I don't. You say, what do I think about it? And I don't think about it. It's not of any interest. I mean, the worst thing that can happen is that I've got to hang around and wait for the next Buddha when I'm blessed with living in this Buddha sasana, right in the middle of it, when it's become so well established, with at least another 2,500 years of it to go, which is still in itself many more lifetimes for me to enjoy these teachings. Okay, do you practice the elements walking meditation at all? I believe the foot is the earth, then raising the foot is fire, then suspended in the air is water, then returning to the ground is earth. This would be quite a slow and exceptionally mindful practice that I've not attempted. Would you kindly speak about this? So, no, I don't practice that. If I'm practicing walking meditation, I am practicing walking meditation, paying attention to my foot lifting, moving, placing. Lifting, moving, placing. Or even, stepping right, stepping left, stepping, but it's really more a case of just lifting, moving, placing, without even saying those words, just fully observant of the feelings of lifting my right foot into the air, yes, but moving it then and putting it back down onto the ground, and continuing with this with the left foot, and walking mindfully, but not unduly slowly, not walking slowly with my arms out like a zombie, just walking naturally with my arms in front of me, maybe held together so they're not swinging around, but just walking at a moderate speed, maybe slightly slower than normal walking pace, but not unduly slowly. Maybe if I've got a very active mind, I might walk more quickly, and I might say stepping right, stepping left, stepping right, or the words Bhutto, Bhutto, boot on the right step, do on the left, boot on the right step, do on the left. Elements meditation is a contemplation, like body scanning, reflecting on all of the 32 parts of the body, and even metta meditation to some extent. These are contemplations for consideration when sitting, when unable to develop samadhi, or when in a sufficiently peaceful state of mind, and a calm, tranquil state of mind, that you can reflect and give consideration to these important things to assist with insight, to assist with seeing clearly and developing wisdom of anicca, dukkha, anatta, impermanence, unsatisfactory and not self, through the contemplation of the elements, which are more than the three you're mentioning. They are in Buddhism, they are earth or solidity, water or liquidity, air or wind, which is gaseousness, so not space, but the gas, the wind, the flow of air. So these are the states of all of the physical elements on the periodic table, being that they all can be solid, liquid, or gas, or ferrous. Not ferrous, that's metal, isn't it? The word for fire, burning. Anyway, fire, the fourth element, they can all be in one of these four states. But then in Buddhism we have space, because there needs to be emptiness, space. Someone asked, I titled a video Sunyata and Emptiness, and they critically made the comment, I think it was critical, not in a kind way, but I thought you were going to talk about emptiness and sunyata. Yes, I did. I mean, like I said, a beaker is empty, whereas the emptiness or sunyata we talk about is containerless. There is space all around us. So for these elements, whatever state they're in, these four elements, earth, water, wind and fire, which are more states of all of the elements that we know, like concrete or plastic or metal or water, whatever state they're in, they have to be somewhere, and that is in space. Plus they also contain a high percentage of space. And then in order for us to know about them, there has to be awareness, consciousness. So that's the sixth element. So there are four: earth, water, wind, fire, space and consciousness or mind. So there are 6 elements in total. This is not for walking meditation. Walking meditation is when you've had enough sitting, you're getting a little bit tired, you get up and you practice walking meditation. But it is still the aim in walking meditation not to become absorbed in samadhi particularly, because it's difficult if you're walking, but to clear the mind, have the mind reach states of tranquility, or passaddhi, peace and tranquility and calmness, from the practice of not thinking too much. So don't complicate your walking meditation by incorporating other practices. So why we also don't use anapanasati whilst we're walking, practicing walking meditation. So mindfulness of the breath, it can get too complicated unless you're very skilled. But then even with the skill and an ability to do that, say watch the breath and in conjunction with your steps, then you would start to be trying to control either the steps or the breath in order to coordinate the two. Otherwise it wouldn't work. And if you're doing that, you're not practicing walking meditation. So in walking meditation, just walk back and forth, turn around, stop, and then walk to the other end. Before you set off, make the determination not to think about anything at all. And if you get to the other end and you've been thinking, stop, turn around, and make the determination again. This is the beauty of walking meditation. Every time you get to the end, you can redetermine your intention not to think about anything other than stepping, lifting, moving, placing, lifting, moving, placing, or stepping right, stepping left, stepping right, stepping left. But try to get away from the labeling as such. Maybe to just using butto, 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 if you have to be saying something at all in your mind. Do you have any thoughts on the relationship between suffering and determination to ordain? Right, so not really, but I'll read the rest of this. I understand the karmic causes are complex and difficult to identify in a linear way. But have you found that people who experience more intense or extended suffering find themselves drawn towards the more direct path towards the end of suffering as a bhikkhu or bhikkhuni? So what you're saying there is, do you have any thoughts on the relationship between suffering and determination to ordain? So the good way to read that question is can a determination to ordain, so a desire to become, be a cause of suffering? Yes, it can. You may not be well placed. You may not have the karma in place, or the conditions, the pachaya, the causes and conditions in place to ordain in this lifetime. You may not be healthy. You may not have a location which is where it's possible. You may be just too old. Maybe there are age restrictions where you live. You may not have all of the requisites required to ordain. One of which is you need all of your arms and legs. You may have lost an arm, may have lost a leg, or born as such. I mean, I'm afraid these are, there may be some exceptions somewhere, but these, as they have stood for the last 2,500 years more, have been a requirement for ordination. So if you still desire to ordain, wanting to become, it's because you've lost sight of what that's for. But you're correct in saying that's to have the direct path towards freedom from suffering in this lifetime. by relinquishing all other worldly distractions. And in that sense, then if you've had a degree of suffering, you're perhaps more likely to be spurred on towards more intensive practice. However, that is often not the case. People often will just dwell in their suffering, or it can be in itself a distraction or something that veers them off in a completely different direction until they come across the Dharma and realize that there is the opportunity to practice. But it takes a long time and a lot of practice before you will lose this determination to become anything and see ordination as a further step of renunciation. Because if you don't see ordination as renunciation, clearly you do see it that way from what you're saying in your writing, but many don't. Some people think it's an escape from suffering. Then that is wrong view. It would be soon picked up. You go and live in a monastery as a layperson for a long time before you can ordain. And it would soon be noticed that you've come to escape something. You're running away, whereas you're not. You're going to tackle your suffering face on. You're going to approach it directly rather than bury it or run away from it. You're facing up to the difficulties in life. You're not getting away from them. Ordained monastic life is far more difficult than household life. But it's far easier to practice 100% of the time in monastic life than in lay life, because there are none of the comforts or distractions that make lay life so much easier in monastic life to take you away from the practice. There's nothing else to do, basically, which is why it's considered the fast track. So if you are saying, hey, are a lot of monks and nuns just there because they had problems, everybody has suffering. So we're none of us immune from that. And even though when you become a monk or a nun, when you have ordained, there will be suffering. There may be more suffering of a different kind, but there is always suffering until we completely eradicate its cause. Now you can do that as a layperson or as a monk or a nun. So these are my thoughts on that relationship between suffering and the determination to ordain. I would say that suffering isn't a reason to ordain, but suffering is the understanding the cause of suffering is in itself a reason to make a determination to ordain. But the determination to ordain should be to renounce more, not to become. It shouldn't be how to become a monk, it should be how to renounce worldly life. Should be the question we're asking of ourselves. And I think on that note, I should leave it there, because I'm not sure what time I started, but I'm getting a little bit hot now, sweaty. I might go a little bit more into the shade. So I hope there's something of use there. If there's not, then please just let it go. Maybe I'll be bombarded with more reasons to lie, maybe more reasons to kill, maybe more reasons to take intoxicants. There are no justifiable reasons. The 5 precepts are just that. They're black and white. If you want to become free from suffering in this lifetime, one has to keep at least those 5 precepts. But I say at least, you don't have to keep more than that. If you keep the 5 precepts, there's no reason why you shouldn't become free from suffering in this lifetime. So on that note, I wish you very much more progress happily on the path towards Nibbana. Until next time, be happy and stay well. Sukhi Hotu.